Hi everybody. So it's Bukhara State University online lessons. I am Baxronova M A, teacher of English Literature Department. Today I'll teach you how to write story. So can you write story? So we are all storytellers. We all live in a network of stories. There isn't a stronger connection between people than storytelling. Stories as an essential part is woven into the history of its time. So let's learn some basics about story writing. So definition of writing a story. A story is basically a narrating of real or imaginary events involving real or imaginary people. So it's fictional, it's not true, or it can be taken from your real life. The length of a written story will depend on the format, whether it's a novel, novella, short story, and etc. The short story may be of 500 to 15,000 words in length. It has a beginning, middle, and end. So how to write an effective story? We will be focusing on the shorter format of the story, and we'll take a look at the basic structure of the story as well as some points to keep in mind. So if you follow this structure, you can write your own stories. There are some elements for writing a story. So they are setting, beginning, character introduction, plot, conflicts, climax, and word conclusion. So let's start with setting. Setting or backdrop is the time and location in which story takes place, or in other words, when and where your story happens. So for some stories, the setting is very important, while for others, it's not. It's a basic element in fiction, and the setting provides a framework for what's being discussed. And the setting may be of three types. The three types of setting are the elements of time, place, and environment. And the beginning of the story. So the beginning of the story or the introduction is of essential importance. You must have come across some often used beginnings to stories like once upon a time or a long time ago. And at the beginning of your story, you should introduce your readers with your characters. So like there lived a king or queen with a daughter, and etc. So let's see some example from YouTube, some videos.
Once upon a time in Wonderland, there was a castle where the king and queen.
So as you witnessed, so there was a castle. It's setting, time, once upon a time. So long time ago, there was a castle. It's the time and place of this story.
Baptized their newborn baby princess with the name of Aurora.
So the narrator in this story is introducing you with the characters of this story, the main characters of this story. So let's continue learning elements of the story. So character introduction, as we said before, so introduce your readers with your characters at the beginning of the story. So don't add new characters at the end of the story. Your story will depend heavily on how well you write your characters. So you should use descriptive paragraphs in order to describe your characters. So to develop your characters, you can use dialogues as well. So through dialects, readers can just imagine the character, their appearance, their characteristic traits as well. But you want to keep the dialects limited in the shorter format. Also, don't include unnecessary secondary characters. Every character of the story must have a purpose, which means don't add too many characters which are not necessary for your story. So characters can be animals, human beings, even insects in the story. Plot is the main map of the story. It's a consequence of events that happens in the story. So plot is organized pattern of or sequence of events that make up a story. It's a literary element that describes the structure of a story. It shows the arrangement of events and actions within a story. So the plot is the main part, main event, main meaning of the story. So every plot is made up of a series of incidents, fancy word for events that are related to one another. During a story, the main character, so it's called protagonist, goes through a series of events. So antagonist is against of protagonist, against of a main character. Each of them taking him closer to or farther away from his goal. So conflicts. Conflicts is struggle between opposing forces, between antagonist and protagonist, and story without conflicts cannot be interesting. So conflicts make your story interesting. Usually the main character struggles against some other force. This type of conflict is what drives each and every story. Without it, the story would have no point or purpose. So without conflict, your story can be like an essay or just descriptive paragraph. There needs to be some struggle in order to capture the interest of the reader and care about what might happen to the characters. So climax and conclusion. So before learning the climax, let's look at the video again.
Among the guests, you'd find the three forest fairies.
So as it's the beginning of the story, the narrator is introducing all characters of this story. So they are three fans, king, queen, and a newborn baby princess.
Flora, the red fairy. Fauna, the green fairy. And Spring, the blue fairy.
I grant you the gift of beauty.
So this is the beginning. And so they were the protagonists of the story, and this is antagonist of the story, which makes some conflict and which makes the story more interesting. So these fairies struggle for the enemies of the princess, and this is conflict. So we can see through during the story this conflict, and which makes the story more interesting, and which is the main part of the
Protect the little princess. The fairies hid her in the forest, in a small house where no one, not even her, knew she was a princess. There was an old sewing machine.
So this is another conflict.
From which a threatening police
Just want to sleep, sleepy, sleepy.
died.
The princess has fallen in Maleficent's trap.
She'll never wake up until she receives the kiss from her true love. There's no doubt she will sleep for a long time.
So this is also conflict with main character, princess, against antagonist, Maleficent. And so this is again conflict. So you can see more than 1, 2, 3 conflicts, problems in the story. So it's up to the length of the story. So if you create one conflict and at the end you will give resolution, so which means that your story will be shorter. And if you create more than 2, 3 problems, conflicts, your story will be longer. So so climax is the major, most important event of a story. The moment when protagonist, so the main character of the story, achieves his or her goal, or less often fails to achieve it, but not sometimes, not always fail to achieve it, but mostly so protagonist achieves his goal. So this is culminates in climax. So if there is a plot twist, there is where you will include it. Always end your story in an interesting manner. So it's happy end. Also, it's not necessary to give your story a definite ending. So if you end your story with some deaths, with so unhappy endings, so it can upset your readers. So now important points to keep in mind. So if you want to learn how to write a short story, you will have to go through these main steps. Make sure you give your story an exciting and appropriate title. So title, it's better to give title at the end of the story, because so while writing a story, if you are creative, you can create so unexpected things, and at the end the title cannot, so title which is given in the beginning, so cannot match your story. That's why it's better to give title at the end. And this title should grab the attention of your readers. And the title is the first impression you made on the reader. The story must flow fluently. If there is a series of events taking place, make sure the flow has some order. The reader mustn't be confused, so don't give too many conflicts with too many characters. Don't use a very flowery language or overuse complicated words. The best stories are written in uncomplicated words, just in a simple language, so as not to distract from the plot. And define your core message. So what you want to give. So every story should have conclusion. And so you should give it, and after, you shouldn't give it with words. And after reading your story, your readers should come into conclusion and learn something from your story, which is needed in their life. So these are all about story writing. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye for now.